Welcome back, everybody. It is the Awesemo.com Nhl Dfs strategy show, and we have a 7-game slate to discuss for tonight. I'm Jake Hari, joined by Michael Clifford, Slim Cliffy. You might know him as. How's it going, Cliffy?
Oh, not too bad. Just kind of enjoying our day here. Just another day in quarantine land.
Yeah, hopefully not too many remaining, but I guess we'll see. Every day it feels like there's more news that I don't pay attention to. So I just do what I'm told and just try to make some money playing DFS. It hasn't been great so far, but it hasn't been too bad either. I mean, there's not the massive swings like in NFL with like these crazy prize pools. I feel like I've been pretty close, but hoping to pick up a big cash here at some point. I see a bunch of people in our Slack did well last night, Nolan included. Nolan Kelly, you guys know him. We had another subscriber take down, I think, the $4. So things have been pretty good for some people in our premium Slack chat. And it sounds like you had a pretty good night last night as well.
Yeah, not bad. Went 2X, which is something I'll never complain about, especially early in the season. You know, you and I were talking before the show that early in the season can be tough because you're going off the previous season's numbers. You got to know when to adjust and things like that. You know, and on that note, I want to say one thing. You know, people have asked me, when can you start using this season's numbers? Typically, numbers tend to stabilize, like underlying shot metric numbers like Corsi stabilize at around 20 games. Now, 20 games is, over a third of the season. You probably can't wait until March, to start making some changes. So, the 20-game stabilizer was with the old divisions as well. People playing across divisions, not just in your own division all the time. So maybe things will stabilize faster because you're just playing the same teams all the time. So I'm probably, around the 10, 12, 15 game mark. I'll start looking at this year's stats. But as of right now, I'm still going off last year's stuff, except for ice time numbers, like ice time allocation.
Yeah, that's the one thing I think that I'm using right now on the projections on the site is just like getting an idea of how much ice time these guys are going to play night to night. And you can get that from a couple game sample and at least make a pretty educated guess based on who's skating with who. But yeah, I mean, relying on a lot of last year's data. But I was talking to Josh yesterday, and that's like almost a year ago, the last time some of these teams have skated. They played like 10 games in a year's worth of time. So, a lot can change. Guys can get better. Guys can start getting washed up. Just kind of depends. So still feeling everything out. I'm just playing like a really spread out approach. And it's gone okay. Like I said, I've been close, but haven't done anything too big yet. The prize pools are still looking pretty good. Not as good as maybe the first couple nights, but, most of the tournaments are filling up, which is good. People love overlay, but it's not good for the long term because if things keep overlaying, then the sites will not give us the 20K prize, 20K to first prize pools, the 5K and the lower stakes type of stuff. So glad to see some of these are continuing to fill. Off the top, if you guys could drop us a like, that really helps us out. Hit us with the subscribe. We're closing in on 50,000 followers. We're trying to get there by the Super Bowl. We're 1,300 subscribers away. So help us out if you like what we do. That really helps support the channel. All right. 7 games. So there was going to be one right now. There is one that's already canceled. I haven't heard about any other games, but I guess we will see because I think Carolina played, was it Detroit or someone like within the last few days. So I don't know how the NHL is dealing with this, but do you have any ideas on how they're doing contact tracing at all here?
I mean, supposedly they're supposed to quarantine anybody that was directly, in direct contact with the person. So, you saw that with the Dallas Stars. Like, they basically had to quarantine the entire team because everybody got COVID. Now, I don't think playing against a person will necessarily count as close contact. So I don't think there's anything to worry about with Detroit tonight. But, this is something we talked about, I think on the first show. This is going to happen frequently through the year, which is why it's going to be important to be around for lock, not only lock for the first game of the slate, but for lock for the rest of the games too, because, we could show up in a couple hours and Michael Rasmussen is scratched or Dylan Larkin is scratched because, maybe he was a close contact. They deemed him a close contact. NHL's been pretty secretive with their COVID protocols. So we don't know exactly what's going to happen here. I suspect because we haven't heard anything about Detroit yet that we're not going to hear anything. But again, this is why it's going to be important to be, by your phone or by your computer when those game times start rolling around.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, news is always important in NHL, but even more so this year with possibly COVID scratch. This is the first game we've had canceled on the day of. Like Dallas has had a bunch of games canceled because they had like over half their team test positive. And they're going to be back shortly, hopefully. And hopefully it's just this one game. I'm sure there's going to be a bunch along the way at this point. But we'll just keep moving along with the games we got and then react to the news as we get it. So let's start with the New Jersey Devils and the New York Rangers. I'm going to pull up the lineup builder right here, and so I can see all the players. We have a 2.7 implied total for the Devils. I think this total has gone up a little bit throughout the day. 3.3 for the Rangers. Mackenzie Blackwood and Alexander Georgiev going for the Rangers. Rangers are going to, I've seen a lot of talk about them today and in our Slack and on Twitter and such. It's only a 3.3 total. I thought it might be a little bit higher. It was much lower this morning. I think it was like 3.1 or so when I looked and the total jumped up. But you got a pretty good top six. Zibanejad, Kreider, Buchnevich, I think, is going to get some ownership. Devils not really getting too much here, but what are the things that you're liking here?
Yeah, the team totals is one thing that really stands out because when I checked this morning at about 10 or 10:30 a.m. my time, which is like 9:30 a.m. Eastern, it had already gone from 5.5 to 6, and the Rangers are already gone from 3 to 3.3. So, I think people caught a 5.5 total pretty early and got it to where it should be. I think for me, honestly, the first thing that jumped out to me tonight was the Devils' second line, and that's Zaka Gusev and Andreas Johnsson. The reason for that, one, is that Colorado, we're going to talk about them later this slate. They're the most expensive line on the slate, like really expensive to the point where you have to go find your 3 and 4K players to fit into your stacks. And that's where New Jersey 2 can come in with Zaka, Gusev, and Johnsson. I mean, the entire stack, I think, is 11,500. You can leave Johnsson off in a 2-man for about 9K or whatever. The reason I like the stack is that they should get matched up against the second line from the Rangers. Now, the second line from the Rangers has Panarin, Strome, and Lafreniere. Like, Strome is a terrible defensive center. He's fine offensively, but he's just awful defensively. Lafreniere is a rookie, and Panarin's like fine defensively, but he's not great. And then once you get past Adam Fox, like, who are you going to be going up against on the blue line? Brendan Smith, Jack Johnson, you know what I mean? Like, Jacob Trouba kind of looks washed. He looked bad last year, and he's looked bad so far this year. Like, there's nothing about this Rangers team that scares me. And I think Zaka and Gusev are kind of like that perfect 2-man to put in with your Colorado stack or maybe even the Washington power play stack or Pittsburgh power play stack or something like that. So I do like I see people talk about Hughes and Palmieri, and I don't mind that because like Hughes is probably going to play 19 or 20 minutes. It's just that I don't think that lines look very good. I still think Hughes is another year away from making a big impact, and it's not like Zach is a great center or anything, but at least Gusev, we know he's a real good winger, and they're going to get easier matchups. So I'm in. Like, I have a fair bit of the Rangers like power play mix, like mixing the guys that are on the power play for a stack. But one of the sneaky stacks that I like on the whole slate tonight is definitely that Devils second line.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I was going to bring them up as a line that I like, so I'm glad that we're on the same page there. Showing almost no ownership. Maybe they jump up a little bit as more people, as like the ownership comes up on like Colorado 1, some of these other expensive stacks. I think the Rangers, it's one of the better spots. They're getting double-digit ownership on DK and pretty much all of their top 6 guys right now. So like they're not going to be any secret, especially with one more game off the slate. That's going to increase the ownership even a little bit more. Fox at 5,200. He's actually pretty popular for that price, but he's playing on the top power play. So people are going to go with some top power play Rangers stacks. I'm certainly going to have some. Rangers 1 right now is my highest owned stack. But again, I'm not discounting this Devils side either. I think this could be potentially a high scoring game. The Rangers not very stout defensively. At least they haven't shown me that they've been stout defensively. One really bad game, one really good game for them. They've been shorthanded 12 times in 2 games. So I'm hoping the Devils get there as well. And I'm going to have plenty of that second line, Zaka, Andreas Janssen, and Nikita Gusev. Anything on the blue line you want to point out here? You mentioned Fox from a defensive standpoint.
Yeah, PK Subban for sure. The first game of the season, he played over 30 minutes. Now, that was an overtime game, but even without overtime, probably still would have been 27, 28 minutes. The second game of the season, he played almost 27, and that was in regulation. Like, if they're going to play him 26, 27 minutes a game, like, he's completely fine as a one-off, because this could be a game New Jersey wins 3-1, Subban has a goal and assist or something like that. Nobody really does anything. Like, it could easily be one of those games. So Subban's actually one of my favorite defensemen on the slate in general. Like, I think he's fine as a one-off or a part of a power play stack or a line stack.
Yeah, I wasn't really a guy I'm targeting, but if he's going to play anywhere close to those type of minutes, like if you're around 25 or 4,600 and there's any stack that I like on the team, then he's a guy that would come along for the ride, maybe with some Devils 1 or Devils 2. Both lines have 2 players on the top power play currently. People were talking about in the top stacks tool, we did have like some mix up with the New Jersey lines. FC was having some trouble with those. So those should be updated on the next run of the top stacks, which should come either during the show or shortly after. We're working on ownership as well and trying to get that corrected. So most of it is correct, but there's a couple spots where I think we're a little bit off that we'll mention as we go along. Any goalie takes here? $7,800 for Alexander. Mackenzie Blackwood, $7,300. Maybe going to see some volume. Ballsy enough to go there?
Yeah, I'm using Blackwood. Well, one thing, it's a leverage play too, right? Like, between the top 6 of the Rangers, like a quarter of the field is probably going to have some sort of Ranger stack. So, if I can use Blackwood at 5% on a 7-game slate and leverage against 25% of the field, I'm going to do it. Like, I'm not going to have a crazy amount of Blackwood. I think I have him in 3 out of 20 lineups, but I will use him.
I think that's a reasonable amount. And so, and especially on some of my double stacks, I like to correlate where it makes sense. This is a spot where you've got a cheap line. You've got a couple cheap lines, actually, that are in play, I think, on the Devils side. Playing the goalie, even if they only score 3 goals or something, if they can win 3-2, Blackwood could easily hit the 35 save bonus for one of the lower priced goalies on the entire slate. So I like the call, especially for MME builds. I would have a tough time clicking him in like a hand built lineup. So luckily I don't have to. All right, let's go on to Buffalo and Philadelphia. 2.9 implied total for the Sabres, 3.1 for the Flyers. We don't know who's going quite yet for the Sabres. It was Hutton last night. I've got him tentatively in for 7K. Brian Elliott confirmed starter for the Flyers after Carter Hart got pulled. Buffalo won, crushed him, and chased him out of the game. So Elliott's going to start. We saw this matchup last night. Do you like these back-to-backs? I mean, did this help you from a research standpoint? And do you think that we're going to get some increased ownership on Buffalo 1? I know it's an 8-game slate last night, and now it's a 7-game slate tonight. So obviously everyone's going to have a little bit more ownership to go around. But do you think we're going to see a big overreaction here because Buffalo 1 went off?
Yeah, that's one thing that I'm really interested to see this year is, do DFSers get off at teams that screw them, right? Like, let's say the Rangers were to blow it tonight. What's the Rangers' ownership tonight versus the Rangers' ownership, in their next game or something like that? I do like these back-to-backs for that reason. I do like one, it makes for great hockey. Like the games so far have actually been fairly more entertaining than I thought they would be. And just that familiarity is kind of fun. And like it just makes for a different challenge in DFS this year. So I kind of enjoy that too. Like just getting to this game in general, like Philly looked terrible last night. And I think Couturier, it's kind of underrated just how important he is to that team. Because if you look at their center depth, like Kevin Hayes is good, but he's a second line center. He's not a top line center. Nolan Patrick is the next center after that, and he missed the entire season last year. And then after that, you're getting into their fourth liner into the AHL depth. So without Couturier, like there really may not be a lot here to match up against Eichel. So I don't think it should be that surprising that the team looked bad because they don't have the centers that are necessary. Like if Patrick came along, like if he had developed over the last 3 years, if he hadn't been hurt, maybe it'd be a different story, but that's just not the case. Like Couturier, he's just such a big part. Like I believe in Morgan Frost. I think he's going to be a good player, but he's nowhere close to the level that Couturier is right now, offensively or defensively. So like I'm in that situation where I think I'm probably going to avoid the Hayes line and the Eichel line. Like I think we're going to get more ownership on the Eichel line. It's, fewer games. They went off last night. No Couturier again. Like I think people are gonna key into that. So I'm probably gonna get away from Buffalo here tonight. I'm gonna get back onto Philly 3, I guess Philly 2, whatever you want to call them, the Nolan Patrick JVR line. I'm gonna be back in on that. It's basically just because I don't want to use the higher priced players or Nolan Patrick JVR Farabee. Sorry. I don't want to use the higher priced players without Couturier. I just don't. Like, I don't have faith in the other centers to generate the offense that they do. So I'm probably going to just go, like I said, to Patrick and JVR, use some sort of stack there, the cheaper guys, so it can help me fit in my Pittsburgh power play stacks and my Colorado power play stacks and all that. So that's kind of where I'm going. One thing I wanted to point out on the Buffalo side, everybody kind of, I don't want to say screw. Jeff Skinner gets a lot of flack. Some deserve, some not. He's quote unquote on the fourth line, but he played 16 minutes last night, and he played over 14 minutes in each of the first 2 games. And we've seen him jump up to play some shifts with Eichel, some shifts with Stahl, not all the times, just a couple times a game. Maybe he'll jump up there for some power play time as well. So like, if they're going to play Skinner 15, 16 minutes, kind of in that tweener role where he moves all around the lineup, I like him as a one-off at 3,100 or 3,200. And I told you earlier today we were going to have to talk about fourth liners today. So here we are. Jeff Skinner, I like him as a one-off.
Yeah, okay. That's fair. I mean, like, when I think of fourth liners, I'm thinking of, let's see, I'm scrolling through guy like Michael Raffle on the other side. Jeff Skinner's not a fourth line guy.
Right? Yeah, that's fair.
So I think that's reasonable. I mean, it's not great, but as a one-off, like this is a guy that can score goals. He's done it in Buffalo to some extent. He's done it. He did it in Carolina when he was there. Like just kind of hasn't really found a home on any of these lines. And it's not like Buffalo's been any good, so I don't know why they don't give him a shot in the top 6. But anyways, I don't hate that call actually, especially for basically no ownership. I think we might see some new lines for Philadelphia. I think they blundered last night. Did you notice that at all for Philadelphia?
No, I only watched the first half of the game, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, I was looking on Natural Stat Trick and I saw like the line combos were all like no one had more than like a few minutes of ice time together. So potentially you could see some line shifting going around. Good part about this for Philadelphia, if you are looking to play them, is you're going to have clarity on how they're going to start the game at the very least. So I would just pay attention because like right now, I think there probably are 3 playable lines. I don't really love the price on Hayes, Giroux, and Konechny together. Would much rather have Couturier in there, but they're all in the top power play. Maybe you get the backup for Buffalo. I'm not sure what's going on. I don't think Allmark can play tonight. And maybe you get Hutton on the back-to-back. So I think there are some things to like on the Philadelphia side. They just burned everyone last night, so maybe you get a decrease in ownership. I'm going back to a little bit of Buffalo won, but I think I was at like 15% last night on an 8-game slate, which was good. Like all my top lineups were Buffalo won stacks. Right now, I'm closer to where the field's at. It looks like their ownership came up quite a bit. And if you want to give them another bump in ownership projection, might not be a bad idea just because people may have won some money with them last night. They want to go back to them. People looking at game logs, they see they have upside. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but this might be a spot where you get some recency bias ownership bump on Buffalo One. But I still think they're a fine play. It's the same spot as last night. There was a reason I liked them last night. Nothing's really changed. Maybe just some different Philadelphia lines. And the goalie changed too. They have a worse goalie in net, and they beat up Carter Hart, who's a pretty good goalie. So Buffalo definitely has some stuff going for them. I'm not too concerned about playing the second line on Buffalo, other than just like a cheap fill-in, Stahl, Olofsson, and Cousins, and Rasmus Dahlin. Some people were tilting him last night. 4,400 top power play goes with Buffalo One. I think that's fine as well. FC still having issues with Erik Gustafsson. So just make sure if you guys want to play Erik Gustafsson, when you upload him, and like you X out the players that don't have a projection that you uploaded, he's probably going to get X'd out of there. So it happens for me. I don't know if it's happening for everyone. Maybe I have him spelled wrong or something in my sheet, but just be aware of that. If you want to play him, you're going to have to put in that projection manually. Did we cover everything there? I feel like we talked for a long time. But
just one thing about Rasmus Dahlin. He didn't finish the game last night. He left with about 6 minutes left. They said he's going to play tonight, but just something to watch for and warm up.
Okay. Josh in chat says AV said they'd have internal changes talking about Philadelphia. So, yeah. I mean, it's good if you're going to be around at lock. If you're not playing NBA, I think it might be a good chance to just kind of mix and match these Philadelphia lines in whichever formation that they are in. So I'll be paying attention to that and be trying to update my lineups for that. Let's go to the Capitals and the Penguins. 3.2 implied total for the Caps. 3.3 for the Penguins. Vitek Vanecek, I want to say. Is that how you say it? It's not Vanecek. Vanecek? Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So. You almost got there. Casey DeSmith for the Penguins. Kasperi Kapanen, it looks like he's going to play. Looks like he's going to play on the top line with Crosby and Gensel. That is a pretty fortuitous spot to be in. You've got the second line for Pittsburgh that I think I like as well. I'm having a little bit of trouble deciding between these Pittsburgh top two lines, but when that's the case, maybe you just go for a power play stack and try to capture a bunch of goals here against the backup. So what do you like on the Pittsburgh side? And then we've got some new lines for the Caps if you want to talk about them as well.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how Kapanen does because he's a shooter like Gensel. Like he's not a pure shooter. He's pretty good in transition, but he's a finisher. He's not necessarily a playmaker, so it'll be interesting to see how all that works in together. Yeah, Washington changed up their lines. Oddly enough, there's just whatever happens, they're going to screw over Jacob Vrana. TJ Oshie's down to the third line playing with Lars Eller. Daniel Sprong is up on the second line with Kuznetsov and Vrana. Like, I don't mind Sprong, but I just think he's a bottom six winger. I don't think he's worth having that second line role. I think they're just doing it because they need to spread out not only their offense, but their best players so that they can actually put together a decent third line and not leave it all up to Lars Eller. When you're trying to pick between the Pittsburgh lines, I think line matching is important here. And a guy I know, Adam Daly Fry, and if people want access, they can subscribe to it. They can just get in contact with me. He does line matching, like who coaches match up every game when they're at home. Pittsburgh's top line should take the top line from Washington. So for me, that takes Washington's top line out of the equation. Like, I just don't want to have anything to do with that. Pittsburgh's second line should see a mix, like between second, third, and fourth lines. The Malkin line will not see the Backstrom, Ovechkin, Wilson line. They should see, not exclusively, but a fair amount of that second line. I think the second line for the Caps, Vrana, Kuznetsov, Sprong, could get absolutely run over defensively. Like Kuznetsov, even with Oshie there, with Vrana, Kuznetsov, and Oshie, like they were fine. Oshie is a much, much, much better defensive winger than Daniel Sprong is. So I don't mind Sprong as a one-off if you're going to use him in that stack, but I'd rather target against that stack. I think that line's going to get run over tonight. So Pittsburgh 2, Zucker, Malkin, and Rust is one of my favorite stacks of the night. I have Pittsburgh stack a bunch of different ways. Like I have that even strength line stack. I have Malkin and Rust with Crosby. I have the entire power play. I have Malkin and Rust with a depth guy like McCann. Like I have quite a bit of the Pittsburgh second line here tonight. I'm about 30% Malkin on the slate. So if he doesn't come through, if he doesn't come through tonight, we might be in trouble. But I really love the spot, and I think he's going to go way under owned for what the upside is here.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, good point on the line matching. I think so. Crosby usually takes opposing top competition. Very clear who the top line is for the Caps. It's going to be Crosby against the Ovi line with Backstrom and Wilson. I was looking at the numbers from last year from this Ovi, Backstrom, Wilson trio. Not as bad defensively as I had remembered. I know they had a really, really rough stretch where I was targeting against them quite a bit. Pretty solid offensively, but Crosby line, Crosby-Gensel pairing. I mean, we don't have numbers with Kapanen, but Crosby and Gensel, one of the better lines in hockey, depending on who they're paired with. So, like Kapanen, supposedly pretty talented. He didn't really work out in Toronto like they thought he was going to. Maybe, I mean, you get a second chance with Crosby and Gensel. That's not too bad. So I like stacking up both of the Pittsburgh lines. I think I lean towards Pitt 2. Like if I was building limited lineups, I think I might have like more Pitt 2, maybe in that like $40 on DK because of the better matchup. But I'm going to be mixing in both of the top two for the Penguins. I'm going to be mixing in some power play stacks. They're relatively affordable. Like you don't get the $7,800 Malkin here, $6,700. Rust is under $6K. You got Letang at a reasonable $6,200 price tag. So I just really like Pittsburgh. I don't really love much on the Washington side, and it's weird because they have a 3.2 total. Like it's not like they're at 2.6 or something really low. They've got a decent chance to score goals here. I just don't really like what they're doing with their bottom nine. So I'm with you, Cliffy. Anything else, blue line, or anyone else you want to mention here?
I mean, I'll be playing some Vrana one-off, even though he's only for some reason they're only playing him 13, 14 minutes a night or whatever. But he's just so talented that he can double dong on in 11 minutes. So I like Vrana one-off here tonight, but I'm not stacking that line or anything from Washington.
All right. Before we move it on to the next game, just reading through chat here. I like to keep an eye on YouTube chat. You guys are always firing off some hot takes about Buffalo, Philadelphia. Yeah, Couturier is a pretty big loss for them going back to that last game. And then, I forgot to shout out Clayton yesterday for the super chat. I think he super chatted us like 3 or 4 times already this season. So I did forget about it yesterday. I saw it and then forgot to go back to it. But Clayton, if you're watching, appreciate that from yesterday. Wilson Hattie night. Wow. I remember there was a night like maybe 2 or 3 seasons ago when people thought that testosterone was a bot because he just slammed full Washington 1 with Backstrom, Ovi, and Tom Wilson and got a hat trick. And I remember just being like, why would this guy play Tom Wilson? And that was before I like full stacked religiously. I don't think he was on a power play. He got there on like an empty netter for his hat trick. Do you remember the slate I'm talking about? This was one of the more tilting nights I think I've had in DFS.
I mean, I don't remember the slate, but I remember that happening for sure. So,
yeah.
Like, I don't know.
It was not.
I'm trying to rack my brain thinking of that slate, but it's just not coming to me. Like I remember that happening. I remember that Tom Wilson hat trick for sure. I just don't remember the slate or any other games or anything.
Yeah, I just remember being so mad that he had all these different combos of full Washington 1 and the lowest owned guy got the hat trick. And the guy, like everybody thought Wilson was a plug then too, myself included. Obviously, I didn't know anything. Like Wilson can play a little bit of offense. He's not just a goon, which I found out after testosterone took all my money. Let's move it on here. What do we got? One more game before we talk about a little promo. Yeah, we're going to do Chicago and Florida. We've got a 3.0 implied total for the Blackhawks. Currently, I think it was at 3.1 earlier. And then 3.3, 3.4 for the Panthers. Not sure who's going for Chicago. They've switched between Colin D'Elia and Malcolm Subban. I've got Subban in there right now for 7,100. Not sure that it's going to matter all that much unless you're just chasing the high upside goalie. But again, this is going to be another one. You're going to know who's starting before lock. So that is nice. Bobrovsky making his Panthers season debut, I believe. Everybody likes Florida here. They're insanely cheap. What are you doing with this top 6 and maybe even the top 9? Frank Vetrano, Frank the Tank on the third line here. Wenberg, like you got an interesting dynamic here with these Florida lines because it's a Wenberg slate. I'm not going to bash him because we know what happens when we bash Wenberg.
Thank you.
He just doesn't shoot a lot, so maybe he'll shoot twice and score one of them. But he just doesn't. He has a 7 individual Corsi for per 60. Like going back to the start of last season, like he just refuses to shoot the puck. So, yeah. And that being said, I'm probably still playing some of him just because he's playing on a really good line with Huberdeau and Hornquist, especially. Maybe not a really good line, but it's a really good spot against the Chicago depth. So, what are you doing with Florida here?
Yeah, Florida is an interesting case because, like we saw, Huberdeau getting broken up from Barkov is something they haven't really done a lot. They did it some last year, not a lot, some. Apparently they're going right back to it this year. Now, I don't mind power play stacking Florida here. Obviously, it's a great spot because, Chicago's probably the worst team in the league. But Huberdeau didn't play a lot of minutes last game. And if you go and look at the game, they won it 5-2, but it was a 2-1 game at the end of the second period, and it was a 3-2 game 5 minutes into the third period. Like, it was a close game pretty much throughout. And Jonathan Huberdeau played under 15 minutes. Like, what Joel Kenville basically did was played the first line as a first line, played the second and the third line as a pair of third lines, and the fourth line as like a quasi third line. It's like they had 1 first line and 3 third lines. It was crazy. Yeah. So, like, I love the spot. I don't mind the line mates, actually. I don't mind Hornqvist and Wenberg. But, like, do I want to pay up Jonathan Huberdeau if he's going to play 15 minutes? I don't care what the matchup is. Do you want to pay $7,000 for 15 minutes? Like, I'm having a really tough time getting up to a lot of Florida stacks. And it's just because I'm worried about the ice time. So, like, I have quite a bit of, like, Barkov and Duclair and Ekblad or something like that just because they are cheap and you can fit them in with other expensive spots. But I'm not super gung-ho on Florida as much as everybody else, or as much as some other people seem to be. And part of that is also who might be starting for Chicago. Like, I don't know why Colin D'Elia gets such a bad rap for Chicago. Like, if you actually look at his numbers, he's only played 16 or 17 games or something like that. He has an overall save percentage above league average on that team. And if you look at his high danger save percentage from, I think it was 2018-19 when he got all his starts. If you look at his high danger save percentage, it's like top 5, top 6 in the league. Now, high danger save percentage is one of the few stats that goalies have been found to be able to repeat somewhat year to year. So it's one of the best stats for evaluating goalies. Now, it's a small sample for D'Elia. Like I said, we're talking 17, 18 games or something like that, but he's been good. So, like, I'm not on board with just burying D'Elia and saying he's some AHL goalie or something like that, because in the sample that we have so far, he's been good in the NHL. So, like, between Florida just shredding their lines, Huberdeau playing 15 minutes, D'Elia possibly being in net, the Panthers being wildly popular tonight, like, I just don't have a ton of them. Like, I have more Chicago than I have Florida, because I don't think Florida's a very good team either. So I do have like I said, I have some Barkov and Duclair with Ekblad or something like that. I think 2 power play Florida stacks, but like I'm not going all in on the Panthers. I think it's don't get me wrong, this is a good spot. They're a good price and all that. I just think there are other spots that have just as much upside that won't come with the same ownership.
Yeah, and I wonder if Chicago is going to get a little bit forgotten here. I mean, good total for them. You get Suter centering, expected center, Kane and DeBrincat. I kind of like that line. I mean, I wasn't a big fan with Strome. I don't know that Suter is an upgrade on Strome or anything like that. You would know better than me, but 16.6, they're grading out reasonably in the top stacks tool. And if you look at Florida in the top stacks tool, you're probably not going to want to play them. So maybe just, skip Florida when you're looking at them if they're your favorite team. I still think I'm going to have a bunch of Florida, so I'm not just like a complete slave to the top stack tool. It's definitely something you should take into account. The value is so good. We're showing pretty low ownership on Huberdeau, but that means you might end up with some more of our favorite guy, Wenberg, or you could power play stack, like you said, Barkov, Huberdeau, Hornquist, and then the 2 defensemen might be a unique lineup construction. I'm going to have a handful of those. But yeah, the limited minutes for Huberdeau is definitely an issue. The only thing is that maybe he doesn't even need 15 minutes against this team, getting another crack at it for them to put up a handful of goals and for him to get in on a few of them. So the Chicago depth is just awful. Not super interested in Chicago 2 and Chicago 3. But I like Florida just not quite as much as what the field has them right now. And I think I'm actually going to have around or over the field of this Chicago 1 lineup. One more note while you were talking about D'Elia. They announced Kevin Lankinen as the starter, $6,500 goalie on DK.
Oh, my God.
I don't know much about him, but he's $6,500 on DK. So they were not expecting him to start. It sounds like he got called up from the taxi squad. But he's going to be in play.
Never heard of him. I've never heard of him. Kevin Lankinen has 40 games in the AHL with a .910 save percentage. And that's it.
Flame emojis all over the place. Mark Smith says, I would be a total projection slave to Alex's numbers. Well, hey, if you want Alex's numbers, you can get them. We've got packages for as low as $3.95 per week. So thank you for setting me up there. Go to awesemo.com/join if you want to get an NHL package or a Platinum Pass. Then you get access to everything. Slack, all the tools for every sport. You can add on Fantasy Cruncher and start being a slave to all of Alex's stuff. So there you go. Any other defenseman in this game? Ekblad, Yandel, do you have a preference there? I mean, the price gap is pretty wide. And then anything on Chicago side?
I mean, I'm using Bachfist and some Chicago power play stacks. I'm just hoping he's still on the power play. No, nothing, not much for defensemen from this game. I find a lot of them to be overpriced. Yeah,
I'd just be a little bit careful with what you do with Yandel. Not really a high volume shooter. I'd rather one-off Ekblad. He might not be a $5,800 player, but in this matchup, I'm still using him a little bit as a one-off. I'm going to try to avoid doing that with Keith for $4,500. All right. Cliffy, do you like MMA? Do you watch MMA? I don't think we've ever talked about this.
Actually, what did I watch last night? I watched the Forrest Griffin Stephan Bonner fight last night. The old one from the Ultimate Fighter from like 2005.
All right. Yeah, I wasn't aware.
That's the greatest fight of all time.
I don't know. I was like, 2005? I was like 9 years old,
You got your homework tonight, buddy. Go watch Forrest Griffin, Stephan Bonner. It's the best fight you'll ever watch.
All right. Well, we might have one coming up that is about as good. So it's McGregor and Poirier, I believe it is. Yeah, okay. McGregor, Poirier. And that's happening this Saturday. We've got a promo going on for that. Promo code Connor is how you get the MMA Weekly Pass. You get $6.38 off the MMA Weekly Pass for the first week. It's a pretty good deal. If you're looking to play MMA, you want tools, you want the MMA version of the Top Stacks tool, ownership projections, be a slave to Awesemo's projections for MMA this week. They've been pretty good, and I like playing MMA DFS. It kind of reminds me of NFL Showdown just because it's 6 roster spots, and they've changed up the scoring on DraftKings. I think FanDuel has the same scoring with their MVP spot, and possibly one more player if I remember correctly. But MMA DFS is a lot of fun. So use that promo code Connor. Come join us for that MMA weekly. And if you're so inclined, again, get the platinum. It's the best deal on the site. You get everything. You get premium Slack. You could get all the NHL tools as well if you get a platinum membership. But if you just want MMA, again, promo code Connor, CONR. One N in Connor. I'm just finding that out actually right before the show when I put that read in. So news to me. We've also got a new NHL Twitter account. If you guys want to go check that out, it is Awesemo NHL DFS, at Awesemo NHL DFS. So that's where you're going to find some breaking news, some nuggets from Slack as they come in, late news. Go follow that account if you want to avoid playing players that do not play, which happens all the time. Look at Mike Hoffman on opening night. He was like 17% owned in some of these tournaments. So that is an edge in itself. Winnipeg, Ottawa, maybe some people's most fun game of the night. 3 implied total for the Jets. A little over 3 for the Sens. Laurent Brossoit going for the Jets. Matt Murray expected to go for the Sens. Both goalies reasonably priced. Both guys I'm probably going to play in stacks with their respective teams. You've got Ottawa's pricing still broken. Pretty good total here. Kind of like Florida, but not as chalky. Still pretty popular, especially for filler stacks. And then Winnipeg, their top line. I think, actually, we've got this mixed up. Scheifele, Wheeler, and Kopp. That actually might be right. I think they went back to that last night. Did they not?
Yeah, that was the line for the second and third period last night.
Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to look if I crunched that way or if I had healers on there. If I, because I just go with what FC has in their lines unless I make any manual changes. But anyways, I'm gonna have to recrunch anyways. What do you like on the Winnipeg side? I mean, do you like Kopp there at all, or what does that do for you? It's $2K cheaper, I guess, for that top line.
Yeah. Okay. So we reran ownership numbers because Winnipeg earlier in the day was pretty. We didn't have them super high owned. I think we reran ownership numbers, and now they're coming in as very high owned, and rightfully so in this matchup. Here's the thing that really caught my eye about this matchup, and it's the line matching. Going back to what I was talking about earlier, who matches up against whom. As I mentioned, Adam Daly Fry does this. We subscribe to it, and the second line for Winnipeg of Ehlers, Stastny, and Connor is going to be matched up from the second line from Ottawa. Now, the second line from Ottawa is going to have Derek Stepan, Evgeny Dadonov, and Alex Galchenyuk. Like, Dadonov he's a fine two-way winger. I'll give him that. Stepan is washed, and Alex Galchenyuk, he should have been out of the NHL 4 years ago. Like, this is, like, I don't think much of Winnipeg, really, but this is a great, great matchup for that second line of Stastny, Connor, and Ehlers. So if you want to get away from the super chalk of Scheifele and Wheeler, dropping down to Stastny, Connor, and Ehlers is fine. Stastny and Connor are on the top power play unit as well. Like, Ehlers is probably their best play-driving winger. Stastny's a great playmaker. Connor's a great finisher. They're in a great matchup against that terrible Ottawa second line. That second line for Winnipeg is one of my favorites on the night. Now, they are expensive. That's the problem, right? Is that if you use Stastny and Connor and Ehlers, you're looking at like $18K or something like that, and that is expensive for a second line. It's just one of those things that it's a good matchup, and I want to get away from the high ownership in the good matchup, so I'm going to probably drop down to Stastny, Connor, and Ehlers. On the Ottawa side, I'll probably be going to their top line just because they're so cheap. Perfect correlation. You can fit them in with other top lines. They'll be playing against the bottom 6 from Winnipeg, and the bottom 6 from Winnipeg is like horrible, like very bad defensively. So I think it's a great matchup for that Ottawa top line. So that's where I'm going to be going here. Ottawa top line, Winnipeg second line. I don't think I'm going to game stack it, but I will have both of those lines on this slate. And like I'm definitely going to mix in some Winnipeg power play. So it's not like I'm going to have 0% Scheifele. It's just that I'm going to focus more on that second line when I'm making my 3-mans.
I think I'm going to do that as well. So I'm looking at my crunch that I did before the show, and I must not have refreshed. And so I have no cop. I'm going to have some of both these top two lines. I don't usually just fade these chalk lines just for the sake of fading them. If there's good reasons or if they have bad numbers at 5-on-5, I'll consider Xing teams out. I'm not Xing out Winnipeg. I am not as high on them, especially that top line if that ownership sticks. We'll get Cop reran in that ownership, and then I think you're going to see some higher numbers on Stastny and Connor with Ehlers playing with them, but probably not to the point where Winnipeg 2 was chalkier than Winnipeg 1. You mentioned the matchup being better for Winnipeg 2, so I think that's what I'm going to end up riding with. Hard to say right now. And then I want to have a ton of Brady Tkachuk. It feels like I played this guy a ton last year. But it's one of those things where like his line is just too cheap. It's too good of an optimizer play for me to just slam it. And I don't really know what to think of that line just yet. I mean, Tkachuk's going to carry play well and get a bunch of shots on goal and, flirt with the 5-shot bonus and stuff like that. So I think he's great. I don't know what to think of the line as one of the more expensive fillers, or one of the more popular fillers, really cheap filler. And so they go with Colorado. They go with some of these other lines. People will game stack this game. I'm not as in tune with that. I like to take one stack from a game where I can. And then Shabbat, 6,300. He's probably going to be where I get the majority of my exposure on the Ottawa side right now. He is my second highest owned defenseman behind Ekblad. Pretty flat exposure. Yossi killed me last night. 3 shots in the first period, and then just goose eggs for the rest of the game. So maybe I need to go a little bit flatter on defenseman. Right now I'm going to get probably close to 30-35% Shabbat, and I feel pretty comfortable with that. On the Jets side, is it Morrissey on the top power play? Are they letting Pionk play? Okay, so it is Morrissey. Yep. He's 3,900. Probably wouldn't play him too much without one of the Winnipeg top 2 lines. So got to redo my stuff for this game, but I don't think I'm going to be where the field's at on really anything here.
Yeah.
Anything else?
The thing with Morrissey too is even without the power play minutes, he's playing 24, 25 minutes a game. So I think he's I think he's fine. Like if you want to use him in a cash game or something like that, I probably wouldn't one off him in a tournament, but I think in a cash game he'd be fine.
Yeah. The free YouTube channel, who gets a sub, you get the Patrick Price. I don't even know what that means. I can't even keep up with YouTube chat right now. There's 407 people in here, so drop us some likes, help us continue to build this channel and provide you guys with some free videos that you seem to enjoy, or at least seem to enjoy talking to other people in Slack as the show goes on. I don't know how many people actually pay attention to the show these days. But we're going to go to Columbus and Detroit, another familiar matchup. 3 implied total for the Blue Jackets, 2.5 for the Red Wings. Merzlikins going for Columbus. It's probably going to be Bernier for the Red Wings. I'm seeing him likely at most places, not confirmed. This is one you're not going to know before lock, so just be around a few minutes after lock and get confirmation if you are trotting out a Detroit goalie. I noticed Detroit 1 had really good numbers at 5-on-5, and I'm not seeing too much ownership on them compared to some of these other lines. Where are you at on Detroit 1?
Yeah, I like Detroit a lot, and a big reason why is Columbus is breaking up their lines. So they moved Columbus moved Oliver Bjorkstrand down to the 3rd line. That leaves Pierre-Luc Dubois with Mikhail Grigorenko and Emil Bemstrom. Now, Detroit didn't hard match yesterday because these two teams played yesterday. Detroit didn't hard match, but Larkin should see a fair bit of ice time against the Dubois line. And without Bjorkstrand there's just not a good defensive winger. Like Grigorenko's fine, I guess, but Bemstrom's not. And Dubois is actually not a good defensive center. He's actually considerably better offensively than he is defensively. So I'm with you. I'm really digging Detroit 1 in this matchup. Should point out that Philip Hronik took, for whatever reason, they had Danny DeKeyser on the top power play unit. Philip Hronik took that back over in their last game, and he's actually playing both power play units now. So Philip Hronik, if you want to use him in your cash games or whatever, he's good to go. Obviously, use him in your Detroit stacks as well. Bobby Ryan's looked pretty good. Since for those who don't know, Bobby Ryan, he went through the league's substance abuse program. He was an alcoholic. He left the league, came back last year. I think in his first home game, he scored a hat trick. He genuinely looked better than he had in 5 years. And so far early this season, 2 goals is, don't want to say everything's just because of 2 goals, but in the games I watched, him and Philip Zadina actually look good playing together. They're going to have Michael Rasmussen between them. I like that line. I just don't think it's necessary to stack that Detroit second line, Rasmussen, Zadina, and Ryan. I don't know if the upside is particularly there in this matchup. And they don't have perfect correlation and all that. So, I don't mind one-offing Zadina or one-offing Ryan. That's probably where I'm going to go with that. So stack the Detroit top line, one-off the second line. As far as Columbus goes, I'm going to be one-offing Bjorkstrand. I might stick him with Foligno as a 2-man because I think they are on the power play. I believe they're on the power play together. So I'm probably going to 2-man some Bjorkstrand and Foligno because I think they're going to see quite a bit of the Detroit depth, and the Detroit depth is pretty bad defensively. So I do like the Foligno, Bjorkstrand, Tessier line. I wouldn't stack them as a line. I'm just probably going to 2-man them. So that's where I'm standing. Detroit top line stack, one off some guys from the second line, and maybe some 2-man Bjorkstrand, Foligno, or just one off Bjorkstrand.
Yeah, the Philly or the Columbus situation is kind of like what I'm thinking about with Philadelphia, but who knows? They could throw you a curveball 20 minutes before and just come out with completely new lines than this. It wouldn't be the first time that type of things happened with Columbus, or the Beats decide to not tweet out the lines or something like that. We've seen that before last season. So, yeah, there's not really a Columbus line that sticks out to me. None of them are probably going to get too much ownership right now. We don't have a player over 14%, and that's Bjorkstrand, and that was probably ran before he was down on this third line. So I wouldn't worry about line rankings with Columbus necessarily when they're this spread out. I think you can take some one-offs. You can take a Bjorkstrand. You could do Bjorkstrand, Foligno, assuming that line's a thing, Domi Atkinson or something like that. But yeah, I think the main event for me here is Detroit 1. So I'm looking to boost them as much as possible. Columbus is probably going to be a pretty good defensive team. They were last year. They've got Jones and Werenski not skating together, but they've got 2 solid defensemen. But I still really I think Detroit 1 is a top 6 or 7 line in the NHL when they continuously play together. And so top power play correlation, they played really well at 5-on-5 yesterday. I think they had almost 20 shot attempts at 5-on-5. Same matchup a day later. They just generate so many chances, and they didn't finish a ton of them yesterday. I think they got 1 goal total right at the end. So you won't look at the box score and see a huge score from any of them. But I really, really do like Detroit 1 here. So I'm hoping they stay at reasonable ownership like what they're at right now. What we got? 2 more? Oh, no, 1 more, right? Yeah, 1 more.
Yep, just the next night game.
Yeah, the next one on the list was going to be Carolina and Nashville. If you don't live on the internet 24/7 like me, you might not know, but Carolina and Nashville is canceled for tonight. COVID protocol. A couple players on Carolina tested positive for COVID. So your site should help you out, whether you're playing on DraftKings, Super Draft, FanDuel, whatever. They should have a note for you. I know DraftKings does. I'm staring at it right now when you go to fill out a lineup. But yeah, just X that out in Fantasy Crunch. I think they already got it out for you, but just make sure you're not getting any players from Carolina and Nashville. Colorado and the LA Kings, late night hammer, Cliffy says. 3.4 implied total for the Abs, 2.3 for the Kings. I think this total might have jumped up a little bit throughout the day. Philip Grubauer expected to go. Cal Peterson for the Kings. No Jonathan Quick. Is it Colorado one night here, Cliffy?
Yeah, I think so. And not only just because it's Colorado one night, it's the ownership, right? The ownership is the big factor here. We have them, the ownership share on our top stacks tool, we have them coming in under 7% as a stack. If you look at the individual players, we have McKinnon at 10%. We have Landeskog at 5%. And Rantanen, I think, is just a little bit above that. Like this is the best line on the slate. Like flat out, McKinnon, Rantanen, Landeskog is the best line on the slate. Anytime I can get a line this good at 5% or whatever it's going to be, I don't care what the matchup or on the road, and I don't even really care what the price is. Like I know price means everything in DFS, but at a certain point, ownership, I think, means more. And I will gladly bite the bullet going way overboard on an elite line like Colorado won than going overboard on like Nolan Patrick and James Van Riemsdyk or something like that. You know what I mean? I'd rather go down actually stacking elite players. And if you can get this Colorado top line, if they come in single digits, it's a blessing. So I do have a fair bit of the top line. I do have some of the second line as well. Burakovsky is out tonight. The second line is going to be Kadri between Brandon Saad and Jonas Donskoy. Like Donskoy in for Burakovsky, it probably makes him a bit worse offensively, but I think it makes him a bit better defensively. So we'll just call it a wash as far as play driving goes. I do have some of that Colorado second line as a filler stack. I do like the Colorado. Like it used to be going into Los Angeles was a death knell, right? Like you never wanted to go into LA to face off against Anze Kopitar and Drew Doughty. But if you look at the top line's numbers, like Kopitar, Brown, and Iafallo, their expected goals against were basically league average, right? And that's if you throw a league average defense at Nathan McKinnon, he's going to shred you. So that top line for Los Angeles doesn't scare me in the matchup. So I do have quite a bit of the Colorado top line. I do have interest in the Los Angeles side here. Like Jeff Carter at 6,100 is an absurd price until you look at his season last year. Like, we like to say Los Angeles is a wasteland. Jeff Carter was on pace for 250 shots and like 25 goals or something like that. And he was injured last year. I've watched LA's games, one LA game so far, and he looked like he was 5 years younger. I hate saying, this guy is in the best shape of his life, but Jeff Carter legitimately looks good on the ice. 6,100 is a hefty price to pay for 60 minutes of ice time, but the shot on goal bonus is always there with him. He, like I said, he put up over 3 shots per game last year. I'm not stacking Los Angeles too. I'm just saying I have some one-off Carter. I have some one-off Athanasiou. I have some one-off Kopitar. Alex Iafallo is playing just a ton of minutes for some reason. I'm not one-offing him. I'm just saying he's playing a ton of minutes, and I can't figure out why. So that's kind of where I sit with this game. Sam Girard is a defenseman that I like here tonight. If you want to kind of get away from Cale Makar, because Cale Makar, I think he's 6,000 or 6,100. Like, it is an expensive defenseman if you want to use it in with that Colorado stack. So you want to take some money off. Sam Girard's playing like 22, 23 minutes. I think he has 10 shots on goal so far, or 11 shots on goal so far this season. So he's putting up his peripherals as well. So if you want to make it a little bit cheaper, I don't mind dropping down to Sam Girard. And I'm also throwing Nazem Kadri. Like, I'll take someone like Rantanen off the stack and put in Kadri to save myself a couple grand as well, because Kadri's on that power play.
Yeah, the one thing with the Colorado defenseman is just that I think they're going with 11-7 tonight, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so, I mean, maybe a little bump down in some of the lower guys, but you don't think that affects Girard enough for DFS, right?
I mean, it could take him down to like 21 minutes, but like if it's 21 versus 22:30, like it's not going to get me from 10% Gerard to 0% Gerard. You know what I mean?
Yep, fair enough. Yeah, I think so. We're going to get ownership updated. McKinnon's going to be higher, but I think so. Like, I think we might see a situation where like McKinnon's like 22%, Landeskog and Rantanen are like 12, 13 or something like that, because it gets really pricey to stack this full line. And if you're trying to stack them with like even a second line and Makar, you're really running out of salary here. The mid-price line, baby. Yeah. So, I mean, that'd be the type of line I would mix in with them. I would try to avoid like the Ottawa ones and just like these chalk filler lines that might be fine. But if you're playing Colorado 1-3-3 with Ottawa 1, you're just going to be duped unless you're somehow leaving like 2K on the table or something along those lines. But yeah, with Colorado 1, they're always in play. This is a fine spot for them, not too worried about Kopitar here. But yeah, just you really want to think about what you're doing when you're putting in your secondary stack, or do a 3-2-1 with Colorado 1. Do something just a little bit different because their ownership's going to come up. We'll get that fixed. And these secondary lines, I don't know. Do you have an opinion on like Colorado 2 and 3? Sorry if I missed that.
Yeah, I do like Colorado 2 here tonight. I don't think the Kings' second line is really much to talk about defensively. And Kadri and like Sad is a perennial 20-goal scorer. Kadri's a perennial 20-goal scorer. These are guys that can score. So I do like the Colorado second line. You know, if like I had them in with like my Pittsburgh power play stacks. But that's the thing, right? Is like you only need to use them if you're basically Pittsburgh or Washington. Other than that, you don't really need them.
All right. Yeah, fair enough. And I like the LA2 call. I'm an Athanasiu stan. So if you're telling me Carter's looking a little bit better too, then I'll play them at almost no ownership. Maybe you could go LA2, Colorado 1. I don't love the game stack, but the ultimate late night hammer, just save all your forwards for the last game and watch your winnings go up and up. Yeah, not. I mean, Doughty at 6,500. What is that? I don't understand that price.
It was a weird. Like Jeff Carter at 6,100 caught me off too until I saw his game log and saw that he was playing, or that he had 11 shots on goal in 2 games. Like Drew Doughty has 9 blocks in 2 games. So, you know, I think they're basic. It sounds like they're basically pricing in the shot block bonus already.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, if he could get the shot block bonus, then sure. But who knows? Those are somewhat random. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's good for today's show. We went through each and every game. Looks like 400 plus of you are watching. Thank you guys for joining. Hit the like and subscribe button on the way out. That helps us a ton. As you guys already know, a lot of you already are subscribed. So sorry that we keep having to beat you over the head with it, but we're really trying to hit 50K before the Super Bowl. Tomorrow, it will be Cliffy and Josh doing the show. So be sure to tune in for that. I think we've got a pretty sizable slate as well. Those guys will take you to 5 Eastern and hopefully have some good lineups to review. So good luck tonight, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Good luck, everyone.